corruption kwa hii Kenya ni kitu kinaanzanga pole ili kifikie kiwango kubwa.
Ministry of Energy, we have Energy Regulatory Commission, we have Kenya Power Commission, we have Kenya Power and Lightning, we have KenGen. We have 4 parastatals dealing with the same product, electricity. These are conduits for thugs to steal money. Why can't we only have one parastatal deal? Because at the end of the day, whether you are generating, whether you are transmitting, or whether you are bringing it to the end user, you're only bringing one thing, electricity. Whether it's generation or from the bulb is one thing. So why do we need 4 parastatals dealing with the same thing?
Ukikuja kugundua hiyo EACC au directors wanabadilisho kila wakati. Unakuta director wameletwa wapya, lakini wale wafanyikazi ni wale wamekuwa miaka 8 yenye imeisha. Sasa pia unakuja kugundua kuna vitu mingi sana zenye pia zifikii wale, na zile zenye zinafikia wale director wageni pia sio zile zenye ziko na umuhimu, lakini watu wangetaka iende holistically. Tuanze kwa EACC, kuanzia kwa mtu mwenye anapikia watu chai pale kwa EACC hadi kwa director mkubwa, wabadilisho tu wote, ama wenye wameletwa wapya wapewe watu wapya, maana kuna wenye ni gatekeepers pale kwa EACC.
Good morning and welcome to our inaugural Candid Conversations business show. Today's show is brought to you courtesy of KEPSA, Kenya Private Sector Alliance, SIPE, Center for International Private Enterprise, and Milestones Resource Solutions. This is a program designed to encourage entrepreneurs, discuss and learn about ethical businesses while finding ways to seal loopholes that lead to corruption and consequently loss of revenue. It is also designed to engage policymakers and civil society to address sector challenges for long-term results. My name is Fatma Elmawi. I am from Milestones Resource Solutions, and today we shall be discussing what triggers corruption in organizations. Research conducted by Ernst & Young in 2015 indicated that Kenyan companies are losing over 20% of their revenue to fraud and corrupt practices. According to the research, fraud and corruption practices are mainly propagated by middle-level managers. It started small. As Kenyans, we even had a name for it. Sindio, we called it Kitu Kidogo. But then it grew, and from Kitu Kidogo it became Kitu Kikubwa. As a country, we lose 1/3 of our state budget to corruption annually. In terms of figures, 1/3 of our budget is over 6 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, this 6 billion could have built a hospital, could have built a school, we could have had a road, we could have had medicine, we could have done so much with that money, something that our country sorely needs. On the set this morning, I am joined by 4 panelists who will help us learn what actually triggers corruption in organizations. The big question, therefore, what triggers corruption in our organizations? So as I ask my panelists to introduce themselves, I would also like them to give us one thing which, in their opinion, actually triggers corruption. And I'll start from my immediate left. Can I start with you, Rachel? Karibu.
Asante sana. My name is Rachel Muthoga. I'm the Deputy CEO at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. And in my opinion, one of the biggest triggers for corruption in institutions, in organizations, is actually lack of clarity in terms of policies and procedures that would be guided, that would provide guidance to decision making. And so lack of clarity really provides an opportunity, a loophole, and that's what most businesses are actually creating an environment that supports corruption by not having clear procedures.
Okay. Thank you. What do you think, Wamboi?
Thank you. My name is Wamboi from the Retail Trade Association of Kenya. I think what triggers corruption is that we no longer hold ethics and integrity to any value. So you will do anything to achieve personal ambition. It drives the greed, your personal greed drives you because ethics and integrity no longer have a place in your value system.
Okay. Ben, being the only gentleman on the set, can I leave you for last? Aisha.
Hello, I'm Aisha Abdallah. I'm the head of litigation at Anjarwala and Khanna. We've seen an increasing number of cases involving corruption, and one of the key factors our corporate clients say is behind this is a belief that rival companies are paying bribes to win business. And the only way that that can stop is for businesses to collectively decide that they will no longer pay bribes, because that will then create an even playing field, and no one will believe that they will lose out if they are ethical. On the contrary, everyone has something to gain because they will be keeping that money that has been spent to win the business. They will be able to reinvest it in their business.
Okay, thank you, Aisha. Can we now go to Ben?
Thank you. My name is Ben Kirago, and I'm the Country Director for Center for International Private Enterprise. I want to agree with my sister Wamboi. I think inherently we have a culture that lacks integrity and ethics. And I don't know where that has happened over time, that as we have gone along as a country over the years, we have admired quick gain. So that has enabled or created the ground for an unethical and an environment where there's little in terms of integrity. Secondly, is also in terms of organizations. Organizations also present the opportunity for people to be corrupt, because organizations do not have systems that check corruption, and they do not train their people about corruption. The discussion on corruption is not had in organizations. So one, there's opportunity, and second, just an ingrained culture of a lack of integrity and ethics. Yes.
Thank you. We are talking about integrity, we are talking about ethics. Let me come back to you, Rachel. Research also shows that middle-level managers are the ones that propagate corruption in private organizations. What makes middle-level managers more prone to corruption over other employees?
I think middle-level managers are in a space, in an institution, where one, they have sufficient power in terms of decision making, but also they have the most information. If you think about it, if we're putting together a tender document, you will send the lower level staff to collect information on this, put together this document, it's going to be presented to a middle manager, who will then be provided with the role of analyzing and doing some of the pre-work before they're able to present it to either a procurement committee or before they're able to even bring it before the eyes of the management and the CEO. So in that space is a space of opportunity that then means that they are able to, one, preempt and to see ahead. What am I actually going to table before this procurement committee? Predetermine and set aside opportunities for those who they have engaged in corruption with. But it's also to look at it that middle management many times is put upon. It's like the CEO doesn't want to make a decision, or the deputy CEO in this case, and they're like, you just proceed with that matter. So you have given him powers that are beyond his level of responsibility, and he's able to then do things that are contrary to what the organization or the leadership would actually have done. So it puts them in a situation where you also you're not held to task as much as higher level management. You're not going to be called before the board. You're almost invisible in that way, and that then is a safe space for a lot of the corruption that happens.
So without realizing it, we've actually created an opportunity for these people to be able to engage in corruption. Tell me, Wamboi, does that mean that it's now become a norm that I must be corrupt in order to get business?
I wouldn't want to say it's the norm, because that would condemn us totally and completely. Yeah. I would want to say it has greatly facilitated business. So, for example, as Rachel is saying, if I use a supermarket as an example, the middle-level person would be a category manager. Mm-hmm. And that's the person who makes the decision on, do I stock water A or do I stock water B? And I, as the business person, I'm thinking, as she said, the other person must already have seen this guy, so let me also see this guy so that I get my water on the shelf. But it is not the norm. It is not the norm. I would want to insist that I don't want to declare it the norm. I would want to use the word we like to use, that it facilitate business so that it moves faster. That is one. Two, I'll use another example. If I have an outlet that requires a shelf in a certain place, and I've asked for my approvals and it's taken too long, and I've thought business must continue, so I put on my shelf, and county government walks in and says, this shelf should not be like this, so we are going to demolish it. The county person will probably say something like, but however we can help you fast track this. So my decision is between, do I demolish, which will cost me X amount more, or do I ask to be helped, or do I agree to being helped to facilitate that business? The inefficiencies in our systems, for me, is what creates that challenge.
Okay.
It is not the norm. It is the inefficiencies that have greatly facilitated the growth of corruption, if you ask me.
So we go back to what Aisha said. It's about creating a competitive advantage. It's about me wanting to do better than the other person so that I can have that lead. Let me come back to you, Aisha, as a legal expert. In the recent past, in fact, you will agree with me, every single day you open a newspaper and you will find something new. If I even were to ask the panelists as well as the audience, in the last maybe 2 weeks or 1 month, how many corrupt practices or how many scandals have we seen which keep on coming, and you think, my God, this is the worst. But open a newspaper tomorrow and something else comes up. I mean, I thought I was shocked enough about seeing all these corrupt issues, companies being implicated every single day, and nothing happens. Now, is the law set up to protect these corrupt organizations?
One of the challenges with the law is that when you're prosecuting a crime, such as, contaminated sugar or unfit products, you need two elements. You need what is called mens rea, which is the mental element, the intention to commit the crime. And then you need the actus reus, the actual act or omission that is faulty. Now, it's very hard normally in a legal sense to attribute an intention to a corporate, to a company. Because as we know, companies act through individuals. Companies act through the board of directors. A company in itself is just, it's like a paper fiction. We call it this company, but the people behind it, they are the people who make the decisions. So you'll find that normally when something has gone wrong, we will be looking at the individuals who made those decisions, the ones who formed the intentions, and those are the people more likely to be prosecuted. But in Kenya, with the passage of our new Bribery Act, we've had a new corporate offense, which I think is going to become very, very important now. There's a brand new offense of failure to prevent bribery, and that offense can be committed by a private entity. So for the very first time, not only are we holding individuals to account, but we're saying that their organizations should have taken active steps to put in places these procedures and systems that we've been talking about to make sure that they close the loopholes, to minimize the opportunities for their staff to commit bribery. So if one of their staff members or officers or directors commits an act of bribery, that entity can now be prosecuted as well for failure to prevent it. And I think that is going to be a game changer, because what will happen is you will find a corporate is going to be very concerned about its reputation, its share price, its brand, and it will not wish to take any chances in damaging that. So when something goes wrong, the corporate will say, we have our systems, we trained you, you are supposed to follow them, you must have been a rogue individual, and we are not to blame. And I think then we will have companies showing that these are not tolerated, and if something does go wrong, it is not because it is encouraged. Okay. I think that will be a big game changer.
So in other words, if for example today as Fatma, if Milestones does something bad and is found to have been corrupt, Milestones will be liable, but me as Fatma, I am also liable, and I have to answer for my own sins, so to speak? Okay. Now, as we are all doing this, Bwana let me come to you. What is SIPE? And as we said, SIPE is Center for International Private Enterprise. What is your interest in ensuring that Kenya businesses run clean enterprises?
So, SIPE essentially exists to strengthen democracy throughout the world and also to do what we call private sector reform. And SIPE is associated with the US Chamber of Commerce, and we operate globally. And one of the issues that we look at as we operate globally, we believe in creating an enabling business environment. And we look at the drivers of or hindrances of business. And one of the things, when you look outside in, you look at the various factors that create an enabling environment for business. And when you look at Kenya, one of the things that is hindering business growth is corruption. And that is especially so for small business. When you look at the things that hinder businesses from being sustainable, we find that especially small businesses are highly challenged to grow in this kind of environment because they cannot grow, they cannot secure orders. And when those orders are secured, they're secured because individuals are owned by certain individuals. So what happens when that individual leaves a business? That business becomes not sustainable. So as SIPE, our interest is to help bring down the barriers of creating an enabling environment for business. And corruption is one of those barriers. Therefore, to do that, we work with think tanks and associations such as we have here, KEPSA and RETRAC. And the idea is to build the capacity of these associations to address some of these challenges. That is why we are interested, because we believe that if we can bring down corruption, we can help create organizations and businesses that are sustainable, and in so doing enable business growth and creation of jobs. Yes.
Thank you. Let me come back. Thanks, Bwana Kiragu. Let me come back to you, Rachel. Research, again, by Ernst & Young shows that originally more men than women were engaged in corruption. However, and I don't want to go into women's lib here, okay? However, we are now seeing the women are also catching up. You know, corruption by women is also increasing, just like, you know, the women's lib. Why?
Catching up. That expression is so wrong. This is one race that women should not be trying to win, isn't it? So when I think about what could be the factors, what could be the thing that is ensured, that shows that expression, the gender balance in corruption, if I can. I'm trying to find language that allows me to address this, is to think about, for many years, women weren't able to rise up to decision-making ranks in companies. We all know. Companies generally hired men, had a predominantly male staff, and kept women in roles that were not decision-making roles. So as women come up into decision-making roles, I think the intention and the hope had been that they would have a diffusing effect on the push for corruption. The drivers of corruption being probably just an extreme competitiveness, extreme need to win, and so there was a drive to be able to have more women, which would then diminish that. But I think what we can say is that as long as corporate culture doesn't change, it doesn't matter whether we put a youth, it doesn't matter whether we put a woman, it doesn't matter if we, you know, clear out the churches and put them to lead our bodies, our businesses. As long as corporate culture doesn't change, then gender will not be a diffusing factor.
Okay.
So there's a need to just look at what is the corporate culture, what can we do to change it? Is it rules and procedures? Is it an emphasis on ethics that would then enable us to be able to see that change?
Thank you, Rachel. In fact, what I'm seeing is that we tend to look at corruption in terms of ethnicities. We tend to look at corruption in terms of huyo ni mwizi wetu, huyo ni mtu wetu. So maybe we need to stop looking at it whether corruption or fraud is being conducted by a man or a woman or from the village or from wherever they're coming from. Corruption is corruption, isn't it? Theft is theft. Fraud is fraud. And I think once we start thinking in that manner, it will actually change the game, because we will look at corruption for what it is, not assign other things to it. Wambui, what are the effects of corruption to businesses, whether it's a small business or it's a big business?
First, I wanted to add something to what Rachel was saying. As the women grow to the decision-making positions, and again, greed, ambition is personal. It's not female, it's not male. Once you get into the corporate positioning that allows you to grow, and then you discover, let's call it the old boys club, that there are things that you have to do to move from where you are to now the next level. I think again that personal ambition and the greed will drive you, whether you're female or male. So as women grow to decision-making positions, they will definitely do the things they find being done. So yes, corporate governance, corporate behavior must change so that we cut it, whether it's male or female at that point. To your question on the effect of business?
Effects of corruption to businesses.
One, it facilitates losses because you're going to use money that you would have used for business strategy, business development to grease somebody's hand to remain at the place you are at. So that money is a loss, and as to your earlier statement, it is money that would have built something else for that particular business. Two, it continues to grow the culture of inefficiencies, because if I'm gaining from a corrupt situation, I have no intention of correcting it. I want to maintain the status quo so that I am continuously gaining from whatever it is I have facilitated. The other effect would be that I've seen actually is that because of the inefficiencies created by me who wants to cover, I will give a tender or a job to somebody who's not suitable for it. So I'll give the second, the third best person, because that's a person we've had a discussion with, to perhaps build this swimming pool. And maybe he doesn't have the capacity. So again, it goes back to the losses in the long term, because somebody else will have to come and fix whatever was not done correctly. So inefficiencies, higher costs, and continued non-growth. Continued non-growth. Yeah.
So basically, we actually end up stunting our own growth.
Yes, we do.
You think by getting this competitive advantage you will grow, but it's actually short term, because in the long term you might not even get another contract because the job that you did was very, very shoddy. What about the legal implications to engaging in corruption within organizations?
So obviously for individuals who are implicated, they are personally liable and they can face criminal prosecution. Often there are statutory penalties, so you can go to jail or you can have to pay a fine. If you're a director, you can be disbarred from sitting as a director of other companies. So there are severe consequences for individuals. Now under the new Bribery Act, we also have quite harsh penalties for companies. So companies can also have to pay fines, but they can also be disbarred from public tenders. So if you have a company that's found to have committed corruption, then they can be blacklisted for a number of years and prevented from pitching for other jobs, which means that in the long term for that company, it will not make business sense to actually take such a significant risk for one project when you might find yourself losing out over 5 to 10 years. So if you are, it's good because businesses tend to be more rational than people. So a business will be told there's this opportunity, but it's coming with this risk. And then the business will have to weigh, does this risk make sense for us? The corporate can find itself, suffering huge losses because its share price tumbles. And we are seeing this in the international markets, that companies that are associated with bribery, they are losing huge amounts of money because the investors are selling those shares. And they're selling those shares at a very low price, which makes that company vulnerable to a hostile takeover. So there can be very harsh consequences for companies, which if the senior management and the board think these through, it should reach the conclusion that in the long run, it is not worth that risk. And that is the place we want companies to get to, to make those decisions.
Okay. What about the impact? I'll take this to Ben. What's the impact to a company when that particular company is actually branded to be corrupt?
So branding, what is a brand? A brand is essentially a promise to deliver specific value. When a company is branded corrupt, that means it's associated with corruption. And we've seen examples like that. When a company is seen to be corrupt, we have seen companies collapsing. For example, I think in the media, was it yesterday, a new bank was launched by the governor. A bank was launched. But why is that bank launched? It's because another bank collapsed. And the reason why that bank collapsed was because the directors were fraudulent to the extent of about 16 billion Kenya shillings. So when you are corrupt, you collapse a business. That's essentially the implication. Therefore, when you corrupt, you actually go against what your brand is supposed to achieve. You also affect sustainability because for the people who used to benefit from that bank, who used to bank, they lost money. And we've seen that severally in Kenya. And then when you look internationally, we've seen a brand that used to sell tires in Kenya, and internationally they got fined for corrupt practices in Kenya. They were fined also to the tune of 16 million US dollars, and their local branch was closed. So corruption kills brands in essence.
Okay. In fact, to add on to what Ben says, whether you're a small business or you're a big business, you want to grow, isn't it? As a small business, you want to trade, and you want to trade internationally. One of the things that happen is that when investors come to our country, the first thing they look at is, are you corrupt? What is the strength of your brand? Are we able to work with you? And if you're a small business, you also want to supply the bigger businesses, and the bigger businesses are scared, like in the case of the tires, the bigger businesses are scared that if I have a smaller company that is not quite ethical, the bigger company also gets fined. Meaning that the space, ladies and gentlemen, is actually becoming very, very small. And now our country as well wants to not only take the company, but us as individual directors responsible, and we become liable for any corrupt practices that you conduct while you are in that organization. So gone are the days, I will kill Rachel and Company Limited, I will go to Wamboi and Company Limited, and then I will jump to Aisha Limited. No, you are not going to do that, because the law will actually catch up with you before you go and you kill another company.
And in fact, Fatima, we have a problem with Kenya. The question is, how does the world perceive Kenya? What's the brand Kenya image? And we've seen investors move away from Kenya to go to our neighboring countries because Kenya has been branded as a corrupt nation. Therefore, it affects us individually, as business, and even as a country. And we've seen a lot of flow of foreign investment into a neighboring country. So we need to be aware that it affects us individually and also as a country. Yeah.
In fact, additionally, we've also had a couple of companies close down because those companies relocated to our neighbors, who are very thankful that we are corrupt, because one company closes in Kenya, another company opens in their country. And think about this, for every country that closes down in Kenya, that is one job less. That is more poverty. That is more joblessness on the streets. Having said that, everybody agrees that corruption hurts our economy. I'd like to welcome our audience, and I'd like now to open the floor to your questions. Let's hear from you. What do you think? And how can we actually start that one step to solving this problem? Let's take the questions from the audience.
Hi, hello. My name is Dr. Kamodo, and kindly allow me to address you in Kiswahili.
Tafadhali.
Okay. Generally speaking about corruption in Kenya, it will be ideal for us to focus on values of the nation that we have. If we don't have values, then automatically we're not going anywhere. And this, when we speak about religion, about church, about mosque, how do we address this problem to our children? Because you see, like, fighting for overriding money and corruption. My other point of view, how do we address a problem with the judicial? Because unaona mtu Nakuru alichinja paka akafungwa within 4 days. Lipa milioni 9 ya NYS, kesi imepelekwa January hearing in 2019 iko 2018. 9 billion ilipotea unawekwa January case. Why can't we speed fast these court cases ati inakuwa rahisi ku address your shida at the opportune time? The next thing will be, do we address the root problem? What is the root problem in our judicial? The lawyers. We know lawyers have been representing these corrupt people, and they are given kickbacks a lot of money to defend these people who are corrupting the nation. So we first of all focus tusukume kwanza lawyers wafanye public audit, lifestyle audit. Then from that
from the civil society. Now, with a clear evidence that our debt has reached 6 trillion shillings, are the government economic policies good for our country? The policies, are they good for our country? We have just talked of business people relocating from Kenya to the neighboring country like Rwanda. Shameful.
My name is Dominic Mureithi. I'm a director of the Chamber at Mombasa and also managing director of Oricon. We have talked about realities, procedures are causing this. There was some years back, we had some issues in management systems whereby ISO 9001 was adopted, and it is celebrated that it improved the management of the companies and they were able to trade. Today, I've never heard of anybody talk about a standard that was established by the ISO called ISO 37001, which is anti-bribery management systems. And I believe that if we adopted such kind of standards and put them in our systems, as we have clearly said, companies will respond more because, for example, there is the auditor who is auditing the standards. There is also the government that is looking at what is going on. And since you have written procedures and policies, if you are discontinued, then you don't work for let's say the government. The government just needs to say, for you to work with us, you need to have these standards. Yeah. So it is upon the auditors and everybody else who are involved to say, no, you are not following the standards. We cannot accredit you or we cannot certify you. Okay. And I believe that would be a good direction.
Okay, thank you. So let's take one more. Oh, 2 more. Okay. 2 more. No.
Habari sasa.
Nzuri baba.
Mimi mshangaza sana ninaposikia kwamba nasema si corrupt. Sisi corrupt. Kenya is not corrupt. Sisi ni waizi. Kwa sababu corruption tumeanzia kwa mambo mazetu.
Ni kweli.
Nitaanzia na injini yangu, nimeongea kwa haraka kwa sababu ninaposikia mambo ya Kenya kimiza huwa nasikia vibaya. Majina yangu naitwa Salim Gamba. Nafanya na East Africa Exchange. Sisi tunaanzia corruption kwa watoto wetu wenyewe. Unapotuma mtoto kwa duka, unamwambia baba, shilingi 5 ni yako kanunue suti. Ukimtuma mbali, unampatia shilingi 50. That means ukimtuma unamuonga. Mtu mwingine akimtuma bure hataenda. Kwa hivyo umeanzia. Ukinichukua leo kuwa MCA, baada ya miaka 5 naniuliza nimetoka na nini. That means singestahili kupeana chochote kwa raia walionichagua. Ningestahili kuwaibia. Ukiandikwa leo kwa KEPSA kama director, ukitoka hapa after 3 months tunakuuliza umetoka huko na nini. That means kasumba yetu si tumeumbwa watu wa kuibia watu. Kwa hivyo unapotembea mahali, amini usiamini, mtu wowote ambaye kumwelezea wewe ni Mkenya anakuelewa wewe ni mwizi. Sisi katika maumbile yetu na tabia ambayo tuko nazo ambayo sisi tumeiga kama ni tumeamua tu hivyo ama Mwenyezi Mungu aliyotuumba tukaanza kuwa waizi namna hiyo ama ni vipi? Sababu unasikia mtu ametuibia. For example, nimetoka Machakos. Watu wa anti-corruption wanasema kwamba Mutua ni mwizi. Mimi natoka barabarani Mundiveni, alafu kesho niseme aliniibia. Sasa nashindwa ni mtu wa aina gani? Utamsaidia namna gani? Kwa hivyo ili tuweze kuomesha, mimi kwa upande wangu ningependekeza ningesema tufanye kama Watanzania. Madam Fatuma
ama Salim ama Kiragu akipatikana ameiba, zile alikuwa ameiba na zile alikuwa amepata kwa halali
Zirudishwe.
arudi zero. Ndio sasa iwe funzo kwa wale
wengine.
Ni jambo la kusikitisha kwamba unaona mtu amefanya makosa kidogo anaenda jela miaka mingi na kizike nafanyika na siku chache sana. Nampatia mfano na huyu bwana alikuwa anaitwa Zomo, ule aliyepiga mtu wake. Within a duration of 4 days alikuwa amefungwa miaka 12. Watu wale ambao walikuwa na mambo ya golden bar hadi wa leo hatujui kujua iliendaje. Hadi wa leo kitu ambaye imeweza more than 15 years. That means waliowashika, waliokuwa wakichunguza na walioiba ni kisema. Kwa hivyo tunapotembea sisi wenyewe tunastahili kuwa tunajihurumia. Hata mimi nimetembea nje kadhaa hapa Afrika, lakini nimeshagundua kwamba kutembea kwa watu waeleze kwamba ni Mkenya wanakuchukua kama
wanakuchukua kama mwizi. Hapana, hujakosea. Unajua lazima tuseme ukweli, isn't it? Let's tuchukue pamoja alafu tujibu.
And then we come for a second.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Engineer Karibu Mushemi. I'm a licensed and civil engineer. I also sit in the KEPSA transport and infrastructure sector board. It would be difficult to address corruption without actually looking at the public sector, because the government is the largest buyer of goods and services, and that's where the mega corruption takes place. And I think one of the key to addressing corruption is to look at the way the government does business. And I think that's the key, because no prudent businessman wants to give money away to a civil servant sitting somewhere in an office. It is the institutional weaknesses that are created by the government that create an enabling environment for corruption. You look at a simple case like delayed payments. You have rendered service to the government or you supply goods and services. You are owed 10 million shillings. You have borrowed money from Equity Bank, and you are not getting paid in time. And the auctioneers are knocking at your door. And a civil servant calls you on your mobile and telling you, out of your 10 million shillings, kubali kulete laki tano,
nitakusaidia
hiyo upate pesa yako. Which is a better option? Is it for the auctioneers to sell your properties, or to give the $500,000 shillings and get your money back? So if the government was paying in time, then that area of corruption would be eliminated in a flash. So the government has to look at ways and means of doing business that helps the private sector. I mean, I always tell in forums like this, we used to have mega corruption in the central bank during the days of foreign exchange controls. That was the headquarters of corruption. Anytime you want to go out of the country or buy something from overseas, you have to go to a foreign exchange desk, pay somebody, so they can allocate you dollars or pounds or whatever it is. When the government opened up foreign exchange controls, that area of corruption was wiped out in a flash. So there are things, and I hope this kind of forums, and the KEPSA, we have the deputy CEO there, they can bring that to the attention of the highest authorities. So they create an enabling environment that doesn't require me or any businessman to bribe anybody, because I'll sit in my office and my payment will come through without having me to go and see somebody. Because the way things are going now, you said about toa kidogo, and now ikaenda toa kidogo. The way it's going to be toa kila kitu. Now, you'll be doing business and ending up with
nothing.
Absolutely nothing. And the last thing, I know His Excellency the President has talked about opening up the tendering process, putting up in the websites and all that. With all due respect, I think the President needs to go a step further. If I bid for a government project, the procuring entity must be compelled by law, one, to give the information to all the bidders relating to the evaluation process. How did they arrive at that decision? Because that's where it's all hidden. Things happen, the evaluation report is a secret, and at the end of it all, you find somebody who doesn't really have the capacity that you have is what we have been awarded the job. So there are some things that through KEPSA and maybe these NGOs, we need to get rid of the government. They can do things in a certain way that makes it unnecessary for me to give a break, because I am not convinced I'll take out my hard-earned money and give it to somebody, unless it is very, very critical for the survival of my business. Thank you very much.
Asante and asanteni for all the questions. Let's now, wow, interesting, isn't it? Na ni mambo mengi imeanza na, are we wired to be corrupt? Do we have a judicial system that is actually can solve all these corrupt issues? Is our policy framework okay in terms of solving? Are we on the right track as far as policies is concerned? And of course, what do we do when you are faced to, do I get this little or do I get foreclosed by the banks? Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to take a first stab at it. And we've received so much in the way of feedback, expression of clarity on the situation, but also some concrete proposals that we can be able to implement. And I'll just say, globally, going back to the question that was raised by the first speaker and also I think by the gentleman from Machakos, the issue of values really has to be where we start. The Constitution of 2010, we were very clear we wanted to spend separate time, energy and space discussing what were going to be our national values, how are we going to ensure that they are part of who we are as Kenyans. If we don't start there, if we don't continue to unpack that and to express it and to understand it, all the rest of the work that we are doing will be meaningless, or it will not stand on a firm foundation. But going on to the issue that was raised by, I think, Mr. Moshemi, by the gentleman from the chamber, about the issue of systems and procedures. Because it's one thing to say to businesses, you should not be corrupt. But in the environment that we've just been described to by Mr. Moshemi, we know it's an environment that then means that you are in a weak space. Yeah? You are in a weak space. You have challenges that are coming, you're buffeted from many directions. What do you do as that committee, as that board, as that management that is sitting here, knowing that we have tendered for this work? We have lack of clarity, we have lack of... So having those internal systems, and I like the example that you gave us of ISO, and having procedures that they've set up against bribery. Thinking about those systems in advance will guide the decision making at that point. Thinking about what we can then do. But then also going back to your larger comment about now going outside of the business now, looking at the external environment, and saying we as business need to advocate for continued expansion of access to information. Access to information that is critical for business, because thinking about the tendering process, how clear it is, the feedback process that we can have is really going to be access to information the same way we want access to information for basic human rights. Okay. And so being able to understand that and to lobby for more information. I think the online portal is already up. It's already up. And we really need to then continue to express that and to say we need as much information to be on that online portal for us to actually be able to use it as businesses. For me to be able to challenge those decisions, or for me to say in this situation, I think there's some lack of transparency that I'm asking that it be looked into. Yeah, I'll leave the harder legal questions.
What about, the legalities? Because if I steal chicken, I go in very, very fast. So, but if I take something bigger, I enjoy my millions, isn't it? While the cases keep on being postponed. Yes, please.
That is because the people who steal a lot of money are the ones who can afford expensive lawyers, honestly, to go and defend and to delay the process and to seek adjournments and to talk to people, to talk to the prosecutors and to talk to other people who can influence the process. When you don't have that money, you are unlikely to get a lawyer who will be able to assist. So that is the reality. But I'd like us to think of something else. We are critical of our courts because we say that they are slow. Yeah, they are slow to prioritize cases of public interest, cases of mega corruption. But how much are we allocating to our courts? If we've just had a new budget approved for the judiciary. The judiciary asked for, I think, the judiciary were allocated less than 50% of what they had requested, and they had provided a budget, and it set out why they needed this money. They needed the money to devolve justice, to build courts so that people don't have to come to Nairobi to access justice, to recruit more judges so that our cases can proceed faster, isn't it? And what did our parliament do? They slashed that budget. Now tell me, these are the same people who are saying they have too much work. There are too many cases. There's a backlog. And you are telling them, we are not giving you the money to recruit more people. We're not giving you the money to repair and improve the court facilities. Yeah? Who is going to suffer? Is it us or them? It is us, as the people who are trying to access justice. Because we're going to keep filing our cases and no one is available to hear them. Yeah? So we also have to think of, when we say the courts are slow, how much resources are we allocating to the courts as compared to, for example, how much we allocate to Parliament? How much is Parliament spending? How much is being allocated to the defense budget? If you say as Kenyan people that justice is important, justice is expensive. Justice does not come for free, as we know. It is fought for. It is allocated. Money is given, isn't it? Yeah? So if you are saying that justice is important, then you allocate sufficient resources for it. Otherwise, you will accept that those people will continue to go scot-free. I think that is the way it is. Somebody had said something about values and our children, because I'm also a mother. I would say that it's a wider issue. It is not a Kenyan issue. We have a celebrity culture that we are praising people who have no talent. They have done nothing for society. We are praising them because of the way they look and because they are famous. So what are we teaching our children? We're teaching them that at the end of the day, it is more important to have money. How you came about that money is not important, but to have the money so that you can be famous and so people can look up to you. Those are the values that as a society, through the TV, through the advertisements, through social media, we are promoting with our children. So why are we expecting our children to do anything differently? Where are the examples that we are setting for them to show them that as a society, we do not prize money above everything else? I think in general as a society in Kenya, we are not showing by our conduct that that is true. If that was true, honestly, we would be spending much more on education and health than we are spending currently. So I think we say certain things, but our actions speak louder than our words. That is my viewpoint. And then lastly, coming to this issue of ISO, which is, it's one way of tackling it. But I would say as a lawyer, I have seen cases of corruption with multinationals who have the best policies and procedures. So ultimately, you can have a lot of good policies and procedures, which is a good starting point, but it will still come down to the people, isn't it? Are they incentivized to comply? And if ultimately you will comply and you will lose out and your rival will win that work, then you will not be incentivized to comply, no matter how pretty your policy is. So I think we need to look beyond paper and to look at the reality. Because if this was not true, we would not have these multinationals, like Volkswagen. They would not be bribing. They would not be cheating the system if it was all about policies and procedures. They would have beaten us hands down. They are exporting corruption to our country. It is not just a Kenya problem. If this was a Kenya problem, we will not have multinationals who are implicated every day in public procurement. This is a worldwide issue. Yes, we have a problem in Kenya, but the problem is not limited to Kenya. We have an issue around our globe, and it goes beyond paper. It goes beyond paper and policy.
Actually, it is it is a global problem. The challenge we have in Kenya is that corruption is in our face. It's here. I don't wake up every morning, I see it. And from the level of the economy where it is, we actually cannot afford. Globally, it is there, but it's not in their faces. But for us, it hurts. It hurts with employment, it hurts with health, it hurts with everything. And when established companies, and Asante, the gentleman from Mombasa, I mean, we've seen Mombasa, they have closed, and they have closed because those organizations have actually gone to Ethiopia and some have gone to Rwanda. Why? Because of the same thing. Now, the first gentleman spoke about the religion. What do we do? I mean, everybody, would I be correct in saying we are a religious nation, isn't it? Men go to Fridays, the mosques are full. Sundays, Saturdays, the churches are full. But we all clap when we get that hefty donation, we don't ask how that donation came up. Somebody gives 10, 20 million. We don't ask. And we don't ask why, because we are happy for the money. How that money came to be, we don't care. What do you think?
I think as a country, Kenya is said, for example, to be 80% Christian. I feel embarrassed when then we are having this discussion today. Because then I wonder, our churches are full. Money is flowing into the ushering baskets on Sunday. And that's why I begin to ask myself, when the gentleman talked about how children are brought up, and when we talked earlier about an ingrained culture of lack of ethics and integrity, how to bring up our children, I think as Kenyans, so much as corruption is a global issue, we need to pause and introspect. Are we really teaching the right things? Are the values that we have the correct things? I mean, when you look at mid-level managers being some of the most corrupt, why is it? Is it because the people they look up to in society are so wealthy, therefore they want to be like the next guy who's driving a Mercedes when I've just started a job? What values is this that we're ingraining as we grow up, number one? So I see it, Fatima, as a long-term problem and a short-term problem. The long-term problem is the general culture of how we are teaching in our churches, and how we are bringing up our children, the values with which we are bringing up our children with, number one, starting there. Then as you go along, as you go into your career, then the organizations that we join, what culture is set up in those organizations? Do they have systems and procedures? And that's why the gentleman from Mombasa talked about ISO. We have systems that create awareness about this whole thing. Therefore, I think it needs to be a continual teaching from when we are young, as we grow, then as we go into organizations, there's a system. And that's why, aside in partnership with KEPSA, we have launched a training on anti-corruption training that we are providing to businesses, because we are trying to help businesses have systems and procedures to do that. But then come to the issue that the gentleman from KEPSA said. As business, we should not keep quiet, because government can promise a lot of things, but we know the nature of government. That as soon as you are out of a meeting, everything is forgotten. We need to keep government to check. And that's why we need to have this sort of collective voice. Chamber, KEPSA, RETRAC should not keep quiet. They should hold government to account. So as soon as that the government says that they're going to put out those tenders, they should go and say more. Beyond the tenders, more should be done. And that's partly why I'm very happy that we're having this discussion today. Because one of the problems that we've had is silence. Private sector has not been speaking to this issue. Now I'm glad that we are even having this discussion. Before it was a taboo issue, but now we are talking about it. I pray that we can go beyond just talking about it here, but that as we leave this meeting, we'll have working groups that seek meetings with government. Like KEPSA have got very good platforms that we can engage on a continual basis, so that then we work backwards, dealing with the short-term problem and also the longer-term problem.
Okay. Wamboi?
The politically correct word for stealing is corruption. So I want to agree with the gentleman that we are actually thieves. We are not corrupt, we steal from each other. I want to agree that it starts with the child. I will not do something for free. So we teach a child from a very early age that if you do this, I will give you this. We don't teach about public good. So if we go back into how we teach, even before we get to churches, I mean, before my child can understand what the priest or pastor or imam is teaching, he's been with me or she's been with me for a while before he can hear and understand what is being taught. So what am I teaching in my home? And then what is school teaching from there, so that that child grows up? And I think one of the beauties of the new curriculum, it seems to be bringing back a bit of that into it. What am I teaching that child from that stage? Corruption is in my face, yes, because it's in the headlines, but I live it in my daily life. It's about, it's actually not about the politician, it's about me. What am I doing in my space to change that? Because if I don't change, I keep saying, we say the politicians are stealing, but if I'm in a bus, for example, and the conductor doesn't get to me, and I alight without having paid that bus fare, I go smiling of I've saved myself some money, but what have you done? You've actually stolen from somebody. You're being a corrupt person. So it starts in my personal space. It starts in my personal space. How am I beginning to correct the situation? Because if each individual who's here does it in their individual space, then we start making a difference. And to Ben's point of the silence, I think we're too accommodating. We are too accommodating, and the corrupt people know it. So we'll break NYS scandal today, and as the noise is out there, and we think you're making too much noise, a new one is broken. I actually feel the scandals are broken to shut you up about the previous one. So when you move from NYS, then the next day you have sugar, so you forget NYS.
Now you have rice.
So it's perpetuated. Why do we keep quiet? Why are we allowing ourselves to be shut up by a new scandal? Why can't we hold on to NYS, for example, until it's sorted? Why do we allow ourselves to have, it was called season 2. Why do we allow season 2? Because we allowed season 2, we will have season 3. If we allowed Goldenberg to go silent. So really our silence is actually one of our greatest disadvantages. So we need to make more noise as private sector, because we are the ones who suffer from the consequences of it.
Thank you. And as much as we are talking about, you see, the government or public institutions, those are the demand side. But we must also accept we are the supply side. We feed into that. And we feed into that because we want to gain advantage over your neighbor, over your rival, over the other person, so that you can be the first one at the winning line, at the finishing line. I'll take 2 more questions from the audience before we go back to our panelists. 2 more questions. Oh, I can see 4 hands. So those are the only 4 questions that we shall take. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you. Yes, you are the last one. Yes, please.
Speaking in an event last week, Mr. Kenoti, the DCIO, urged all financial institutions to carry thorough background screening. My name is Victoria. I come from Arrow Group, a background screening company. What I'm echoing is what our sister here has just said. From our space, can we do the right things on the policies? The people we employ, the people we engage, can we make sure that we know them properly and they are the true selves? Because we have so many fake people, we have so many fake companies which are never there. And when we are doing the background screening, about 30% of the information given is fake. I'm glad KEPSA is coming up with standards for background screening, and it has already passed public participation. So very soon we are going to have standards that every employer should do background screening. So I engage, we learn more, we read, and we get aggressive to take care of our space, so that these corruption deeds, we can eliminate those which are just within our reach. Thank you.
Okay.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Masi Waidanji. I am owner of Kenya Association of Women Business Owners. I also serve in the KEPSA Gender and Youth Sector Boards. Now, I am a very worried person because I think what we need in Kenya is a total paradigm shift from top to bottom. Because corruption starts from top and then it's cascaded. From parliamentarians, from the judiciary, it is so painful. From CEOs of companies. As a matter of fact, when we talk about middle-level managers, they don't work alone. It's a circus. They work with the MDs. There are companies that are known. So that you see, for the MD to perpetrate corruption, they have to have their people all the way down. And it is very important that we start even at the point at which people want to vie for election. I want to be an MP, I want to be a governor. There should be screening. People should be clear. If you have corruption charges, you should never, or scandals, you should never be allowed to be, even to vie. Because what happens when people are involved in competitive stealing so that they have enough money for their campaign? Secondly, I don't know,
It's Aisha? Yes. Aisha, allow me to disagree with you for a bit. It's only this year that probably the judicial budget has been chopped. We have not seen them perform. And that's why we are perhaps not even sympathetic. Like me, I'm not sympathetic in any way. Because they are so corrupt. The other time I read in the newspaper, a young boy, I think was he 18 or 19 years old, he was jailed, I don't know for how many years, for selling drugs. Yet, there are so many young boys and girls that are being paid by the barons to sell the drugs. So the baron, once this boy goes in, he recruits another. Why can't we get those barons, get them in and jail them? So what we need is very bold judiciary, bold judges who will say we don't care how tough the lawyers are, but a crime has been done. We are nailing these MPs, we are nailing these governors and ex-governors. When people start being jailed, then and only then will people take that very seriously. But as long as we keep on playing games, I tell you, even what we are doing today will just be another game, because there are no consequences. And as you say, there will be grander corruption. In fact, I'm waiting for the next season and then the other season, because nothing happens. So it's like you are rewarded for stealing. So until we have those consequences and stop any other excuses, then we'll just be playing games.
Okay, thank you. That gentleman, and then the last one at the back.
My name is Walter Musi, Human Resource Manager. On our side, we screen people who come for employment properly. But
no. If you are talking about 5,000 items or products that can be taken to America, what are we doing before our president goes? Are we prepared? Have we come up with mechanisms to tell Mr. President, this and this opportunities are available there in that land of paradise, but Kenya is no paradise?
Asante. Interesting, isn't it? You can see and you can hear the passion about this particular subject. Do we have one more? Just one more?
I would like to just to give some few comments and also some reactions, probably, where I need to correct. First of all, let us be honest, because Kenya is a very sinful nation. By nature, there is no fear of God. First of all, you have to understand our leadership pillars, especially the political pillars. The pillars are corrupt elements. These are the sugar barons, are the one financing their campaigns. Recently, you had the Uhuru complaining about, I'm losing friends. These people are not honest friends, because they are the people who have messed up our environment. Two, they are appointing authority the same way. Again, the way people are being appointed in this nation need to be investigated further. Even the leadership need to be investigated, because anti-corruption, the integrity is here, is doing what you call vetting of the candidates. But they are also corrupt, because we have come to realize members of parliament are criminal of yesterday. Some governors, the same. So we need to check on that. Also, we have come to realize that the law protects the rich and oppress the poor in this country. There is selective justice. When it comes to the poor, you have to deal with them according to the rule of law. But when it comes to the rich, there is a special cell, there is a special police station to be taken. But when the poor, it will be taken direct to industrial area. There is no compromise of checking, I don't know, there is a what and what. That one is forgotten. And then we need to audit government employees. Our system in a department will find that one ethnic is in control of a department. Mostly finance, procurement, and human resource. Do you expect justice? Do you expect credibility? Do you expect transparency? If you look at the issue that people are claiming that, I don't know, we are teaching, I've never seen a child stealing billions of shillings. Let us talk the truth here. These are old guards. people of age 50 and above. And in fact, they have even taken up their retirement age to 60. And then they'll take another contract of 10 years, 5 years, to steal from us. These people are stealing from us are not young people. They are old, and they are not even embarrassed. So we should not talk about the children. The only children that they are realizing our conduct. No wonder they are not having interest on education, because they don't see prosperity on education. They don't have mentors in education academically. So we need to check on that. And then secondly, the clergy. The clergy are now becoming the beneficiary of the state appointments. No wonder they cannot even talk the truth, and they cannot stand for the truth. And that's why we find that even recently, these are just a game is being played for a while. After all, things will just come back to its normal. First of all, what you have to learn, or what you have to check, it is not a matter of a problem within our laws. Our laws are very clear. Enforcement is the problem. Because when you're trying to enforce, you are being questioned and being stopped. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us talk the truth for this issue of corruption. Because if you give me just an opposition one day without even going to all those issues, I'll just finish corruption. By what? Anybody above 1 million in their bank account, cancel everybody. Take it, transfer it to the central bank, and then explain to us how you got this money. Why should we wait until this whistleblower? They are following us 24/10. We are also getting tired.
We've had so many proposals here, and I think as panelists, I think there's a lot coming out from the audience, and there's a lot of clarity and understanding of the things that can take us forward to be able to solve this problem. It's time for action. And I say it's time for action, recognizing that I say that as KEPSA, that we have accepted this responsibility. We have spoken loudly about these issues of corruption. And so even as we hold government to account, even as we speak to the public sector, we also have to take time within the private sector to be able to clean our own house. And so for us is to say the training that Ben has talked about, the continued engagement with our members and also with the rest of society will be a continued task. Because for us, we believe once we've started this journey, we can't stop. If we stop, then we will be waiting for season 3, which we don't want to see. So for us, it's to say that this is time for action, and we are really looking forward to continuing to engage with you and to bring the solutions that you have proposed, which we have recorded, to bring them to life.
In fact, I want to take a little bit from what you just said, Rachel, and I'll direct this to Wambui. What are some of the ways that businesses can transition to clean enterprises?
I think compliance. As the last gentleman has said, but before I go that, I want to reiterate that it starts with the children. Yes, the corrupt are older men and women, but it starts with your ethics and integrity, which is implanted within you when you're a child. So that is why we must capture it.
Compliance.
So I think one of the ways that a business can start cleaning itself is by complete compliance. If I am compliant with all the laws and regulations that govern the space within which I'm operating, then I really have a stand when somebody comes and asks for something to, shall I say, try out the justice system. Because I know, and I have seen lately, you see a lot of that, of people standing their ground. Was I overspeeding? No. So if you really want to prove let's go, let me be willing to take the extra mile. Let me be willing to be, that's the word, to be inconvenienced, to prove that there is no wrong I have committed. Once I am totally compliant, I should then start standing my ground. And if a lot of us stand your ground because you know you're compliant, we will start reversing the losses that we made with corruption.
We've also heard a lot from the audience about the legalities, about the judiciary, whereas, okay, the budget has been cut now, but they were there before. On the other side, the judiciary is saying that we cannot manage. The cases are simply a lot for us to be able to manage within the time frame and within the mandate or within the budget that we have been allocated. We've also heard from the gentleman who was also talking, who was talking from the perspective of the Mau Mau groupings. How can a business, let's bring it back. You see, every demand, the demand will only grow when the supply is there. Us asking the demand to stop. Why should they stop? It gives them bigger cars. It gives them more money. It gives them bigger houses. It gives them, friends, so to speak. But what are we talking about? The supply side. And this conversation, we need to own, we need to take up. The supply side, what are we doing? And that supply side is us. So having said that, I'd like to direct this question, Aisha, as far as the legality is concerned, how can a business protect itself? We have heard that I don't get paid. So do I give 5 million and I get 5? Or do I lose everything?
I think before she speaks to that, I wanted to add something onto the supply thing. There's a thing the president says very often, and that is the supply comes from private sector. And I think it is driven again by the competition, because I want to win the tender, so I will supply that corrupt element to facilitate me get the tender. So the supply comes, I think, is driven by the private sector. And we are the greatest complainants of corruption. So we should actually then be the greatest fighters of it to ensure that we start reversing the trend.
Okay. The question was, we've heard about the judiciary, about the legalities, about the slowness. It seems like it's such a big thing that we are talking about it, yet we actually don't know where to start. So my question was, how can a business protect itself legally from exposure arising from corrupt practices?
I think the question that businessmen need to ask themselves is whether they wish to risk being made an example of. Because I think this is the climate where the government is seeking to make examples of people. And I don't want to be one of those people who's charged in court and whose reputation is tarnished by the papers and who might go to jail. So I think if we all felt that this risk is not worth jeopardizing our lives, our reputations, our family, our peace of mind for, we would be less willing to give a bribe. We have a measure of control as business people. So for example, when you get that phone call on your mobile, you should record it, because we all have recording devices on our phone. And we now have a portal where you can make an anonymous report to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. And you can report public officers who are demanding bribes. And I think if we are not using the mechanisms that are there, it's very hard then to criticize the authorities for not doing their jobs. I think if we reported and then they didn't do anything, then I think we should meet up again and talk about that issue. I suspect that we as Kenyans are not reporting the demand for bribes because we have decided that, having weighed everything, the pros and cons, we've decided that it's easier for us to pay a bribe. So I think we also have a duty to report this, and we have mechanisms to do that now. You can even write to the newspaper if you feel you don't want to go to the Ethics Commission. We are seeing that public pressure is effective as a tool in making government take action. The other thing we can do easily is make wise choices during elections. So we're all complaining about our governors and our MPs and our senators, but we're all voters. So who are these people who voted them in? It is us. It's not a mysterious population that is Kenyan and they're not here. We were all voters and we're responsible for our choices. We've been told choices have consequences, and sometimes we are told that we get the leaders we deserve. Maybe we deserve these leaders because this is the way we are. So I think it's easy for us to blame every other person for the fault. We'll blame the court. But tell me, this judge who is acquitting someone, who is before them? It's the poor person or it's a specific person? The drug barons are not being brought before the court. So the judge will not be able to say, I will acquit you, but I will convict the person not before them. Those people must first be before the court so that they can take their chances as to whether they'll be convicted or acquitted. If the prosecution is not bringing that drug baron before the court, what is the judge supposed to do? Is the judge supposed to just issue a judgment and the party is not there? I mean, there's a whole sequence of events before somebody ends up before a judge. And we are some of the people who play a role in that because we don't report cases, we don't make criminal complaints, and then we look at each other and say, but so-and-so is the governor. But they're the governor who elected them, and how come they've remained the governor despite the reported cases of corruption? I mean, we all have a role to play. We cannot say it is just the judges, it is just the MPs, because we are part of an interdependent community. So personally, I think, you know, what Wamboi said is important, that we should look at ourselves and the role that we have to play. And some of it is that we're not exercising our power as voters, we're not exercising our power as consumers. We can decide as consumers not to buy certain products because we think they're corrupt. I mean, that has happened in European countries where consumers have boycotted a particular brand. Why don't we make those choices as Kenyans? Why are we saying it's somebody else always who has to take the first step? Why can't we try? And then if we do that and it's still not working, then maybe we get back together.
So this first step that you're talking about, Aisha, let me take it to Rachel. How is KEPSA helping organizations to transition or to fight graft?
In terms of recognizing this situation that we find ourselves in, recognizing the role that private sector must play, what we are doing is we are offering very specific training to businesses in partnership with SAIP. And we've started this as part of the culture change because it's good enough to have this conversation. But on the other hand, when you go back to your business today, when you go back to your desk and you're doing the background tests, what is it that's going to change out of the fact that you have engaged with this forum? So what we are hoping to do is to build a cohort of companies who already are doing business clean. So they've gone through the training, they've checked their systems, they've changed their systems, and now we continue to build a cohort of strong companies like that. What that will do is also, we will then be able to push government, to push external agencies and say, these are companies that we can stand behind. These are people who, at least, even if, we're not saying that corruption might not happen, we're still Kenyans, but if it happens, there is a procedure through which they will be able to deal with it, and they can be held accountable for the procedure that they have already set up. So then we start to change it from the inside and say, as private sector, this is what we are doing. And when we speak to government, we have this is what we've done, what are you doing to clean up your own house? So that is part of the movement that we are hoping to grow even as we go along. So I'd invite companies that are present today to be able to go online and to register for that training, and we'll also be able to issue you more information if you'd like to see it.
Okay. Thank you. What is SAIP doing? How can SAIP, because SAIP is interested in this space where business can work, business can do their business in a very transparent manner. So what is SAIP's perspective on the business transition to a clean enterprise?
Well, first of all, let me say, I think we've spoken enough. And I think what is apparent is that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Just by SAIP convening, in partnership with KEPSA, convening this conversation is a beginning step. So for SAIP is to create capacity to have this sort of discussions. Of course, we are partnering with KEPSA on that and corruption compliance course. So what SAIP will do is continue to engage with KEPSA and such like organizations to build the capacity to have this sort of conversations. But then, even beyond being about talking about SAIP, I want to talk to myself as a Kenyan. I am here seated today. It's not about what other people are doing. The question I'm asking myself, what is my role? They keep saying that if you're pointing a finger, four are pointing back at you. So the question I want to ask ourselves, I know we are frustrated, but the question is, what are we doing as individuals?
Okay.
We will, working with KEPSA, we will try to create this sort of forums to get people to have this discussion. What we're also seeking is to have a collective action portal where we can come together. We can form a situation whereby we have a platform to engage government, whether it's to engage government on policy issues. But we're asking Kenyans are very good at coming to this sort of forum, but when you ask them to participate, they go silent. We have a thing about silence as Kenyans. When we are called to put our neck out, what we're asking people is to engage. But as SAIP, we will continue to provide the enabling environment and facilities. But really, it's for us to continue these conversations and to participate in this course that we're talking about, so that we can to engage with the EACC, so on and so forth, so that then we can continue the conversation and begin acting on the things that we're talking about here.
Okay, great. This is a great conversation. Thank you, Ben. We are now almost winding up this discussion, and before we end, I would like to take your parting shot, and can I start with you, Wambui?
My question to the public and to each one of us, what are you going to do about corruption? What are you going to do in your own space going forward to start fighting this animal called corruption? That is one. The other one would be to the government. How do we ensure that we clean out the inefficiencies in the systems that facilitate private sector to supply corruption, so that we start seeing that the system works, and if I follow the system, I do not have to bribe. And to the courts, I know there's the discussion about the budget, but my question remains, does it cost less to convict the person who stole the chicken than it costs to... So it's really also a case of maybe the person who comes before the judge. It's a sad thing that the more money I have, the better chances I stand to fight the system. How do we change that?
I don't think there's an easy fix for this problem, because it has taken several decades for us to get to where we are today in Kenya. So obviously the solution is not what I'm going to say today, but I was just thinking that you should put your money where your mouth is. So if as an organization you claim to be clean, then I would expect that you can show a budget for compliance and a budget for vetting, a budget for conducting assessment of candidates. You can put resources towards what you claim is important to you. I think we can do that personally as consumers. We can choose where we spend our money, and we can maybe allocate resources to clean industries. In our businesses, we can allocate more money towards being clean. But also, as taxpayers, we should push our government to allocate more resources to enforcement, because we have the laws now, but clearly they were not being enforced. So can we maybe reallocate priorities so that instead of having to fly to Russia to do fact-finding, we can spend that money on enforcement? That's just an option.
Okay.
For me, as private sector, we need to have collective anger around this subject, and we need to have collective action. So we need to come together. We need to do something about it, whether it is sponsoring somebody for a course, whether it is beginning to have this culture taken up in your organization. But ultimately, as a nation, especially the private sector, we need a collective voice around this issue. We need to consistently be speaking about it.
Okay, thank you.
Mine is about the time and place that we find ourselves in today. The environment is right for what we are doing. This discussion is being held at the right time in terms of the heightened temperatures, the heightened attention to corruption at the national level, right from the top, so that if we keep this ball rolling, if we push and push at this point in time, we're likely to have greater success than if we rest now and wait to try and create a push later. So it's to say that the timing is perfect. The timing is right for us to then make as much noise as possible, for you to go back to your offices, speak to those who aren't able to come here, and continue to pass this message so that we can push this issue as far as possible at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. We've heard from the audience, we've heard from the panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, corruption is real. It is the big elephant in the room. And as they say, how do you eat or how do you kill an elephant? You need to cut it up, isn't it? One piece at a time. And I believe we've actually done that. We simply need to harness this anger. We need to harness and move forward from just rhetoric, because we're very good at talking. Now, this conversation is good, but how do we take this conversation forward? The sooner we agree, we acknowledge, and we must acknowledge the impact to our businesses. And remember, some of us, we've reached 6 o'clock, means that our life is just about to go. But what about our children? What about our grandchildren? Because this country is not just about us. It's about the future. It's about our children that come forward. Now, I do hope and I pray that you actually enjoyed this discussion. This conversation should not end here. Let's take it online. and you can use our hashtag, Say No to Corruption. But above all, allow me to quote, I loved this lady. I knew her when she was alive, and I still quote her. May God rest her soul in peace. Wangari Maathai. She gave us an example once and said that there was a huge fire in a forest, and all the animals were running away because they were scared that this fire will consume them. There was a small bird, the mockingbird, who was actually running to the fire. And then the elephant laughed at the mockingbird and said, "Why are you going to the fire? I am big. I have a big trunk. I can carry so much water. But the fire is big, and I am running away. What can you do?" And the mockingbird said, "It's not about me being big. I am small. I can carry little water." You know, the mockingbird has a very small beak. Okay? I can carry little water and put out the fire. Whether I manage to put out that fire or not is not the issue. The issue here is I have done something. I have done my part. So ladies and gentlemen, what can you do in your personal capacity? We have too many laws. Kenya has a lot of laws. Anti-corruption, in whichever name you want to call it, there are quite a number. And we have heard today, it's not about the laws, it's about the implementation. The time is right, I believe, and I agree with what Rachel said. Our president cannot stand alone. He is but one man. And he says he has lost a lot of friends. Are we going to help him? Are we going to leave him to fail so that we can go to season 3? It's time. We need to do something. This is a war that has no religion. This is a war that has no tribe. And we cannot say, as we like to say, huyu ni mwizi wetu. To sum this discussion this morning, and I do pray, we will be able, whether it's training that KEPSA and SIPE are giving us, we will enroll. We will make sure during the training, they show you where are the areas where your organization is most corrupt. They help you to transit to a clean enterprise so that tomorrow, as Aisha tells us, you are not going to be in the papers. In summary, ladies and gentlemen, I am saying no to corruption, and I'm willing to stand by that. Are you? Asanteni, and God bless you. Thank you.
Hiyo vita ya ufisadi inastahili kuendelea, na isiendelee nusu, ibakishe nusu, ianze pale chini. Kama sasa tuseme mambo ya barabara, kwa matatu ni kawaida, kila akipita askari anawacha 50.
Tunataka serikali wanyakanya hawa watu hiyo manyumba, ndio irudishe ile pesa waliipa. Wakiwachiliwa hiyo manyumba, wataendelea kuipa tu. Wengine wataipa na wanyamaza, lakini wakishikwa na kuwekwa ndani na mali yao irudishwe kwa serikali, Kenya itaendelea vizuri. Lakini tukipomoa nchi yetu, tutarudi umaskini.
Kama ingekuwa wako serious, wanachukua immediately, huyu amekula pesa ya NYS na anafunga miaka 20 na kunyang'anywa vitu zake mpaka zile ambaye alikuwa ametafuta na halali. Ndio iwe funzo kwa wale ambao wanataka kuchukua. Itakuwa kila mtu anaheshimu, mpaka subchief ataheshimu.